Every day, he has a drink filled with malt, milk, and cocoa. Every day he needs the nutritious goodness of Milo. Milo, the energy to go further. This advert is FDA approved. Every day he looks after his brother and chases a bus. Every day he looks after his brother, chases a bus, and learns new things. Every day he looks after his brother, chases a bus, learns new things, and gets back home. Every day he looks after his brother, chases a bus, learns new things, gets back home, and helps his mom. Phew. That's why every day he needs his cup of Milo filled with the nutritious goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa. Milo, the energy to go further.
From Nestle.
This advert is FDA approved.
Welcome to the show. This is The Couch. My name is Amma. But this evening, we are going to be having a social conversation, almost a hard talk conversation, but we'll try to keep it simple because the hard talk edition of the show is actually the lifestyle social issue edition of the show. So we will try to keep it light, even though the issue really is not a light issue. It's a very hard issue. For me and also for my guests, perhaps because we are practitioners, in this field of journalism or broadcasting, and over the years, and here, not to sound like a broken record, because of all the times we have had this conversation on this show, I will not overemphasize on all the times that press freedoms have been under attack in this country. The most recent one that all of us, has all of us raving about is that of Caleb Kuda and Zoe, his colleague, at CCTV City FM. Now, the circumstances, widespread. We all know what happened. A lot of excuses have come up. All of these we will be examining if the excuses that have come up for the behavior of national security operatives in the saga is acceptable or is okay. We'll have that conversation. We are going to be looking at the issue, the aftermath, but most importantly, the big issue, the big elephant in this room, press freedom, and how we are faring as a country. Thank you for joining us. I will quickly introduce my guests. We'll take a break. When we come back, we will have a conversation. Let me introduce Mr. David Tamaklo. He is Editor-in-Chief, WhatsApp News. Also, he is the Vice President of PRIMPAG. Of course, PRIMPAG being the, private, you see, perfect. Welcome, sir. It's great to see you.
Glad to be here.
Great first time meeting.
Yeah, I mean, first time in here, and I think first time that I've been watching you.
Oh,
good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We are expecting Mr. Kojo Yankson, also a broadcast journalist, will join you. So hopefully Kojo is on his way, and he will join us shortly. Let's take a quick commercial break, though. When we come back, we dive into the conversation.
Whatever the occasion, with ATL, you can never be out of style. ATL, bringing fabric to life.
It's incredible! Bang on target!
Every day, he has a drink filled with malt. Every day, he has a drink filled with malt and milk. Every day, he has a drink filled with malt, milk, and cocoa. Every day, he needs the nutritious goodness of Milo. Milo, the energy to go further. This advert is FDA approved. Every day, he looks after his brother and chases a bus. Every day he looks after his brother, chases a bus, and learns new things. Every day he looks after his brother, chases a bus, learns new things, and gets back home. Every day he looks after his brother, chases a bus, learns new things, gets back home, and helps his mom. Phew. That's why every day he needs his cup of Milo filled with the nutritious goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa. Milo, the energy to go further.
From Nestle.
This advert is FDA approved.
Whatever the occasion, with ATL, you can never be out of style. ATL, bringing fabric to life.
And one. Welcome back. If you are just joining in, this is still The Couch. My name is Amma Pratt. We have been joined by the man, Kojo Yankson. Hey Kojo.
Hi.
Great to see you.
It's very nice to see you again.
Looking that far as always. As always.
Thank you. You're very kind.
Right. Okay, so maybe for you, for your sake, I was saying during the introduction that, you know, not to sound like a broken record. So I didn't want to go over all the times that, you know, the main issue comes back to this thing about press freedom, isn't it? At the end of the day. I think that, let me ask my question properly, if you forgive me. Is it about press freedom? Do you find, and here specifically, let's reference Caleb and Zoe, do you find that the issues here are strictly about press? Because I see attempts to muddy the issues and make it about other things. Do you find that this falls under press freedom, full stop?
Well, I certainly think it's one of the headlines here.
Right.
There are other things going on, let's be fair. It's about freedoms, okay? Because what happened to Caleb happens to citizens a little too often.
Right.
National security, other security services very often abuse citizens. So press freedom has kind of taken the spotlight at the moment, because, and rightly so, because Caleb is a journalist. So what has happened has thrown the spotlight on press freedom again. It has reminded us of all the other times when the victim was a member of the press, a member of the media, and that makes it more serious. It makes it more serious because we have deliberately written laws to protect the media, with good reason. Because this whole democracy thing we keep talking about, it hangs on our ability to check our leaders. That's what it hangs on. And whose job is that?
Right.
Okay, so if we allow the people who have such an important job, who have to be our eyes and ears, so that even when we are sitting at home in our sofa, as we are tonight, we can still be checking our government. The people who we have given the job of doing that for us, if they can be beaten, they can be beaten while doing their job. And if we then justify it, if we then, in our debates on social media, we are saying that it's okay for these people who we gave this important job to, it's okay for them to be beaten while they are doing their job. What exactly are we saying?
Right.
What exactly are we advocating? And what are we allowing? You know, because you allow one little thing. I read something recently, I thought it was just so apt. You see, you allow them to take away one right of yours, and then another. In fact, when they take away the first one, you might not even notice that they've taken it away. You might actually argue for it because it wasn't you that it was done to. It was done to someone you don't like. Then they'll take another right away, and then another, and then another. Before you know it, you are caged in. And the way they illustrated it in this story that I read, it was about wild pigs and how wild pigs are captured in Eastern Europe. So what they do is they go into the forest, then they put some food somewhere in a clearing. Eventually the wild pigs will come and sniff around and they'll eat the food and go. Then they'll put some more. Then they'll come back and eat. And then they realize that it's safe to come and eat food here. Nothing happens. Then they'll put up one wall of a fence and put more food there, and the pigs will come and eat. Then they'll put another wall. The pigs will come. They'll put another wall and another, and finally there's a gate, and they'll just leave the gate open and the pigs will walk right through it to eat. Then they shut the gate.
That's it.
And that's the end. This is what is happening to us because we're allowing some of these breaches of our laws to be done to others. We think it's not us, so it's okay. All right, it's all right. What was he doing in that car park? Why did he not ask permission? So are these reasons why he should be beaten? In fact, are there even reasons why he should be arrested?
That's a whole meat of this conversation. You took us right there. And sorry, would you like? Oh, can I go on?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Right. So, David, you are an editor-in-chief. You see. Here on here you are the editor-in-chief. The rest of us are not editors-in-chief.
No, we're not. You believe the boss.
He is the boss too. Right. So let's talk about this issue about permission. Because Kojo just went there, so let's go there. I was hoping to save it for, this issue of permission that keeps coming up in this conversation. Permission, right? How relevant is it to this conversation? Practically, in a newsroom.
Well, I mean, the issue about permission came in twofold. One had to do with whether the journalist sought permission from the press house he was coming from prior to the investigation. The second had to do with whether he sought permission from the National security authorities before entering the premises. So those are two different issues. I will start with whether he sought permission from the organization.
Right.
There are two schools of thought. One is that because of exigencies, when you live in your press house, someone higher than you should know where you are going and what you are going to do. So when anything happens, they will be able to testify to it. And that's one school of thought.
Right.
The other one is that there are security issues involved, particularly in investigative reporting. And so you step out there, particularly in our kind of media houses we have, where people are able to identify the ownership of the particular media house with one political party or the other, or one party or the other. It becomes difficult for that investigative journalist to tell his bosses that I'm going to investigate this, where it is likely that the bosses may not be happy about the kind of investigation he's going to do. So that is one school of thought. So on that score, I think it is plausible to say that the journalist doesn't need necessarily to ask for that permission from the media house. Okay,
so you're being very theoretical right now.
Well,
I want us to enter the newsroom.
I'm going practical because I've experienced this since myself.
Right.
There are instances you are investigating a story, and I mean, we move from one media house to the other. So you are investigating a very sensitive story, and I mean, your boss may have an interest now or maybe even in future. So, and it borders on, the fact that you may be at a certain point where nobody needs to know, and yet you've told your boss, and if he has an interest, you are risking it.
Right.
So practically, I don't think that it is really necessary to seek permission. Maybe it may depend on case-to-case basis, but on that particular school of thought, I think that I agree with it, that you don't necessarily have to ask permission from your bosses before going on every assignment.
Right. You see, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The challenge for me here is that I find that it's probably different in every newsroom. I haven't been, I haven't worked in different newsrooms, but I can imagine that different news editors might have different approaches, So then the issue, this would not be codified in any law, so that we can resort to the law and say, do you need permission as a journalist or do you not need permission? So it becomes, doesn't it?
Well, you're right, but I think if we focus on what happened in Caleb's case, it might help us a bit more to clarify what was right and what was wrong. So Caleb was seeking to verify information he had been given by a government official on social media. We're sticking to what we know, so that we don't have to guess, okay? So he went there because he wanted to verify whether those vehicles that he had just been told have all been distributed, whether indeed they've been distributed. This is not his first visit there. He's been there before, some time ago, I think some years ago. He walked into the same compound and took pictures and left. He didn't get beaten. He didn't get arrested. I don't know how he achieved that. But he did it. Now the question is, did he need to get permission from, say, his editor-in-chief before going there? I want to give you an example. When I was coming to work about 3 or 4 weeks ago, at Tesano, I encountered a horrible accident. There was a truck that was parked in the fast lane and a trotro had driven into the back of it. 5 people died. I'm a journalist. I'm on the way to work and I've just observed the news occurring. I stopped, took out my phone and did my job. Should I have sought permission from my editor-in-chief before stopping to capture what was happening? Or let's say I was driving along and I just realized that, oh look, there is an aspect of the show that we're doing tomorrow that I need to check, and I'm driving past the GRA office. and they know the answer to the questions that we're going to ask tomorrow. I'm driving past, and I think to myself, you know what, let me stop here and ask them. Do I need to ask permission?
Or perhaps you've run into the boss, the GRA boss somewhere at a social event.
Do I need to ask permission from my editor before I do my job there? Or let's say I'm at home and I suddenly get an idea that I want to do a story about filth on the motorway. So I get out of my house, I get into my car and drive to the motorway to do the story. Do I need to ask permission before I go? If I do the story, where else will I go and broadcast it? Is it not at my media house where I am employed? So if that media house then says, I didn't send him, if something happens and the media house says, I didn't send him there, what do they mean? I'm a journalist. I work for you. So wherever I'm working, you sent me. Because once I'm done with it, so that is my take on the question of whether he should have sought permission from his employers. The second issue, as David identifies, is whether he should have sought permission to do what he did at the National Security Car Park.
That's why I find we are most hypocritical.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Again, he was there to verify information that he has been given by a government official. The information is that, and by the way, the original story was that these vehicles have been dumped at National Security and are wasting away. So essentially, somebody made a decision to spend our money to buy these cars, over 300 of them, brought them to Ghana, did not do what they were supposed to do with them, have gone to park them at National Security. They didn't take them to the Accra Sports Stadium. They didn't take them to the beach. They took them to the National Security Car Park and parked them there for years. So clearly, somebody is wasting our money, but is also attempting to avoid being observed wasting our money. Okay? So they've gone to park them in a place where they believe access is restricted.
Right.
So that nobody will see that the money is being wasted. And it is National Security that owns this compound. So obviously the person didn't go and park them there while National Security was asleep. They parked them there with the knowledge of National Security. So National Security knows that there are cars wasting away in their compound.
Right.
So if I go there and then I go and ask permission from them, please, I want to come and capture you doing the wrong thing. Will you give me permission, please? What do you think they will say? What do you think they will say? If Anas and Manasseh always ask permission and obey no photography signs, would we ever find out when the government does the wrong thing? Would we have discovered half of the exposés that they were able to bring to us with the secret recordings they did, the secret filmings they did, the way they infiltrated organizations, pretended to be someone else, and pretended to be someone else just so they can get close enough to capture the wrongdoing and bring it to our attention. They're doing their job. And when they do it successfully without getting caught, we congratulate them.
We award them.
We award them. But when they get caught and our government is in power, then what they did is wrong.
Then they didn't.
We condemn them. And we look, there are people who are defending what the National Security did to Caleb. And those same people, if you go back on their timelines to the year 2016, you will see them condemning that Baba Kamara, who was a National Security advisor. You recall that there were these Mahindra trucks.
Right.
Again, it's vehicles, Mahindra trucks that were parked in some compound. And a guy was standing in his own office building, filming the parking and deployment of this large number of vehicles. They arrested him. They abused him, took his phone and equipment from him. And these same people who are defending what national security did were blasting Baba Kamara's national security for doing exactly the same thing. But now suddenly,
it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Why are we like this?
If I'm not interrupting, if you know the national security premises very well, so when you're entering from the stadium end, you realize that there's no security check there. There's only when you are going to either the reception or where the SWAT is that you could meet someone and talk to.
Right.
And in any case, people do go there to visit people in cell and all that. So, and anytime you enter there, you see the vehicles there, I mean, in the grass, covering them and all that. So anybody could have taken those pictures.
Right.
I do not know.
You see, this brings me, and we are all practitioners here, so let's talk very frankly. And I've had my little encounter with national security too, you know, broad daylight. She said she actually slapped the camera.
It's a lady.
Oh, yeah, it was a lady. She actually slapped the camera guy that I was with. Threatened to remove my eyelashes. Interesting. Of all things to, you know. I mean, this one is... this one is, you know, I have to find a psychological for that. But we would find ourselves in this situation one way or the other. One way or the other. I mean, it's not ideal. And here, of course, again, we'll bow to you because you have, you know, had more, or you have more experience here, perhaps, than myself and Coach. How do you engage? And I asked this question because I was pondering about this on Facebook, you know, 2 days or 3 days ago, and I was about to go on a rant about disrespect for journalists. I remembered, hey, it's been done to parliamentarians. So, you know, because I was beginning to think it's a thing about not having enough respect for journalists, journalism, and the people who, because let's call a spade a spade. Who doesn't know Caleb right now? So it's not an issue of maybe he's lying about being a journalist. That could not have been the, you know. So how do you engage? And I'm asking this question because it's come up again as, you know, an excuse to sort of not make this about press freedom, about how he engaged and even about how it was reported subsequently. So how do we stay in press freedom even as we are getting terrorized?
You see, I was going to come in when add something to what Kojo said about the narrow nature of, I mean, press freedom, whether it's press freedom exclusively or there is
other
issues. And he said that it's part of it. Press freedom is part of it. I think it's basically an abuse of power, which is which subset is press freedom, actually. Abuse of press freedom. And so when you ask how do you engage, I think that the spotlight has come on this issue because of who we are as press men. We get, I mean, we are in the public every now and then, covering people's issue. People know how they see you on TV. They know you by name and all that. So it's easy for people to rally around. And of course, we know how to put these stories out. But there are countless number of people who have been abused. In my recent arrest by the police, when I got to the police station, I was asked questions about stories that I had done before concerning national security. And in those stories, just in a matter of 2 weeks, we had done three different stories on national security harassment of civilians to do with girlfriend snatching and all that. And we are talking about, and often they are used by someone who is not in the security service. So when I got to the police station, there was a gentleman sitting with the commander. I met. And this gentleman, when I got introduced, he realized this is a guy who did stories about me. And this is a business guy who had friends in national security and decided to use them to arrest somebody over his girlfriend. So he was questioning me in front of the commander. So it's like, I'm just saying that there are abuses going on every now and then. So it's power abuse more than just abuse of press freedom.
So it's like a subset of a bigger problem.
Exactly.
That, I mean, of course, we can talk about the IWASO and all, but you haven't answered my question, though. How do you engage?
How do you, the victim, engage?
Yes, how do you, as a journalist, such that we stay here, we stay on press freedom, we don't move anywhere else? How do you engage?
Well, if we stay on press freedom alone, we will not be telling the whole story, because the story extends to power abuse. And so, yes, the press need to have the voice to stand up for the people. So then,
someone asked my question well. So in your personal instances, as the police is misconducting itself, you as a journalist, as a pressman in that situation, what are you saying? What are you doing?
I think I still don't get your question.
I guess you're trying to find out what would be the best practice. If you find yourself in a situation where national security or police is manhandling you as a journalist, how should you behave?
Engage.
Right?
And yes, that's exactly my question. I'm asking this question because, over the weekend, the argument then became about how he chose to sort of present his story and when he chose to present. I don't know if you follow that argument.
Well, I mean, that was a letter argument by Kokubaku.
Right.
That's right.
And that sort of has become the conversation now.
I hope to God that is not the conversation now. I hope to God that as a nation we haven't decided that that's what's important. Okay, because if that's what we're doing, then it's almost as if we are hypnotizing ourselves. Right? We have decided to deceive ourselves. So we are looking for the best lie to tell ourselves. Why does it matter? You see, the fact that we are even asking the question, how should you engage? It's almost like we're having a discussion with women about how you should engage your rapist. Why should that be the discussion? Why are we not having discussions about how people cannot be rapists? Why do we need to advise the victim on how to not be a victim? That cannot be the focus of the conversation. So if we now start saying, why did he not report it first? Why did he wait for 24 hours before he came to talk about it? Why did the media house not mention it when they were first interviewed? Why are we questioning the victim? We don't like the way they are being victims. They should be victims in a way that we will approve of. So we've left the perpetrator to come and question the victim. What's wrong with us?
Thank you.
I think it's
eloquently put.
I think it's unfortunate where it came from, where that question is coming from. And I think by now we are all moving away from there. We've had the GJ president made comments which, I mean...
He's had to come back and say sorry.
Exactly. And other people have come to apologize and to a different line from where they started from. So it's unfortunate it came the senior journalist's own, I don't want to mention the name, but it came much later than where the GJ president, I think it was even after the GJ president.
Yes, it was after the apology.
So I don't see the need for it, but I think we need to keep focus on the issue about abuse and harassment of press, men and women, and which some believe is an attempt to gag the press. So that is where the conversation is. Right. And it's a wrong thing. We all believe that it should have been done differently. I don't know if we are to go into the GJ recent statement, the joint statement with the Primpag and Giba. They kind of came back strongly from where the GJ president started from. So it looks like they've all had some sort of afterthought. And
you are the vice president of the Primpag.
Yes,
I don't like the way you are trying to distance yourself from...
I'm not distancing myself. I'm not distancing myself. I think that if you follow my postings on this issue, I took an earlier position really strongly against the GJA president. I've had conversations with him prior to he coming back to apologize, right. And we understood that. Look, he erred in that.
Okay, so now that we are here, and you see, I'm just allowing the conversation to flow to where it may. Now that we are here talking GJA, Primpag, and all of our bodies that are supposed to protect us, let's have that conversation. And you are vice president of Primpag. So, I mean, this feels like the AU conversation all over again, isn't it? I mean, what are our organizations doing?
Well, what are organizations doing? It's I think the GJA, GIBA, Primpag, they are doing their best.
Really?
I should say, because the media front is quite divided. If I should be honest, the media front is quite divided. We sat in this country when radio stations were closed down, and some radio stations thought that it's not something to discuss. We sat in this country where journalists have been arrested, and others don't think it was an issue. Others even did stories that were supposed to be attacking the said journalists.
Right.
The Caleb issue, we've all seen it. It's a divided conversation about it. Some thinking that the journalists have erred. Others think it was attack on press freedom and all that. So the media front is divided. And when it's divided, I think GIBA, Primpag, GJA are just trying to pull their strings together.
Then they're not pulling the strings hard enough.
Well,
they're trying to just pull their strings together. It's a difficult thing to say. But
one thing I'll agree with David on is that their job is difficult.
Right.
I agree with that. But I don't agree that they are doing everything they can. Look, let me tell you something that happened to me last week, Friday. I went to an event. In fact, there was a big organization that was organizing some sort of tour of their facility for press people. Now, this facility is huge, several acres. So they started off at one place. They told us a bit about the company, and then we had to drive around and observe the operation. So we went to one place, then another, then another. So after the last stop, when we were getting ready to come back to the sort of the office building, there were several cars, the buses and so forth. There were about 30 or 40 of us. I was in my own car, the branded vehicle, multimedia.
Right.
And then there was a bus full of journalists and camera people, and then there was a police truck and several vehicles.
Right.
So as we were getting ready to move from that last spot back to the office, suddenly a police officer jumped off one of the police pickups and stopped my driver. My driver is a law-abiding citizen, so he stopped. This police officer with his AK-47 then walked round to the back seat. I was sitting in the front seat. Walked round to the back and opened the door. Without saying anything, he just opened the door, looked inside, and was like, oh, okay, and then shut the door. So I rolled down my window and said, officer, is there a problem?
Right.
He said, oh, no, nothing. I said, then why did you open my door? Why did you stop us and come and open my door when there's no problem? Oh, please, I just wondered if I could get a lift. And I said, well, then ask. Don't just open my door. So you want a lift? I can clear, because the reason why he shut the door is because there were boxes in the back seat. I said, I can clear the back seat for you to sit in. I'll give you a lift. But you should ask next time. So do you want a lift? No, sir, no, sir. So I drove off. Now, when we got to the office building, this guy walked up to me. He said, oh, sir, I wanted to apologize for what happened back there. But I don't like the way you talk to me. You shouldn't have talked to me like that. After all, you are a journalist.
After all.
Now, I wondered what he meant. So, of course, I asked him. And he was saying, oh, I mean, when you are media, we are all here to do, you are here to do your job. Me too, I'm here to do my job. So if I need a lift and I come and open your door, why should you talk to me like that? And I wondered whether he could have said the same thing if I had been a lawyer or a doctor. Now, I'm telling you this story because I want to situate how Ghanaians see journalists. I want to situate where we are in the pecking order in the minds of Ghanaians. This police officer thinks that for some reason, because I'm a journalist, I shouldn't get upset when he opens my door for no reason, by his own, admission. Right? So would you go and open A. Sankuma's door for no reason and tell him, oh, I opened it for no reason, carry on? Can you do that? Can you do that to a politician? But he thinks he ought to be allowed to do that because I'm a journalist, right? Now, the point I'm coming to is that these organizations, if they can achieve nothing on our behalf, they should at least fight for and maintain the status of journalists in society. They should at least do that. Now, I know how hard it is, and David has pointed to the problem. We are divided. We are divided on political grounds. We are divided even on financial grounds. Certain media houses consider themselves to be richer than others, so they don't mix. We are divided on every possible ground you can imagine. But that's why they are there. Their job is to unite us. Nobody else can. And in spite of all the difficulties, that one thing is a goal they cannot give up on. It's the one thing they can't fail at. At the very least, people should see that we also belong to a fraternity that is respectable. We do something that is needed by society. And without us, it all comes crashing down. That level of respect is something that our representatives cannot allow to slip. Right. But when you have a GJA president who says some of the things that Mr. Afeomoni has said in the past, you forget about the one he's apologized for recently. Let's go back to the ones he never apologized for. You remember when there was that accident in the presidential convoy and the journalist was killed? And everybody, yes, you remember that. Everybody was upset about that, and Manasseh did a story about it. So he went to interview Mr. Afeomoni, who at the time, was he at Ghanaian Times or?
He was at GBC.
At GBC, thank you. Went to interview Afeomoni at GBC, who said, oh, and by the way, he went there because the journalist had said that there was a problem with the vehicle. They had complained about the vehicle and, in fact, the driver before they set off and during the trip. So Manasseh went to speak to Mr. Afeomoni as a representative of all journalists to find out his thoughts on it. And he said, oh, he believes the government official who said that the vehicle was fine. He, the representative of journalists, believes the government official. Manasseh said, hey, okay, this is interesting, but your own journalist from your own media house was in the vehicle and says that there was a problem. You don't believe your own journalist who you sent? He said, no, I believe the government. So if that's leadership, how will we ever be united? Mr. Afeomoni is somebody who I get on very well with.
Same here.
Yeah. But I've got to say that I'm supremely disappointed in some of the things he's done and said while representing us. So if our leader acts that way, then what? I mean, how can I go and stand anywhere and hold my head up high and say,
how can anybody not open your car door and say to
you,
why are you complaining?
Exactly.
Well, I don't know how to articulate it, but I think that you are talking about what the GJA president has said about what happened to other journalists. But even within the, I mean, hypothetically, even within the bodies, the executive bodies, there are issues. And I mean, if you talk to the senior ones who actually get involved in union activism within the journalism bodies, you know, I mean, there are issues. I'm there, so I can't say too much.
I mean, there can be issues, but shouldn't there be areas where we all understand that on this one, like the terrorizing, brutalizing of a journalist, nothing else matters? Can't we, you know, have some baseline
It depends on what the issues are. If the issues are interest-oriented, I mean, speaking about that probably is in someone's, would affect someone's interest, maybe politically or socially. So that is where the issue is. You realize that
our leaders are corrupt.
I'm shocked. Because I would have thought that would be the one area where we wouldn't have disagreements.
Unfortunately,
the journalist has been.
I can't see you lie to you about it.
You know?
I can't see you lie to you about it. There are issues
so
in all organizations. And, I mean, it's a fundamental issue of the Ghanaian. Everywhere that the same thing that happens within leadership everywhere is affecting the media as well.
Right. Let's talk about this investigation that we've been told so much about, you know, that is the national securities investigating the issue. First of all, are we confident about the process? And we think that something would come out of it. Let me be the first to speak. No.
Just so there's no doubt.
Misunderstanding where I stand. No.
It can be yes. I mean, how does an institution set up to investigate itself? Look, we've had the other commission, the Iowa West Wagon Commission,
right,
which gave some recommendations for even the SWAT to take certain actions. Up to now, we haven't had anything. So how does national security set up a committee within itself to investigate a conduct that they are liable for? So obviously, I mean, it's just a smoke screen. I mean, it's not going anywhere. It's not going to go anywhere.
I am shocked that statement was released. I'm shocked that statement was released because I know some of the people who are associated with national security. These are the best of us. The National Security Minister, Mr. Albert Kandapah. I mean, can you say on any platform that is not an accomplished man? How can you issue a statement telling us that, oh, we've done our thing again, we've beaten some people, as we always do.
As always.
You remember the last time we beat some journalists and we said we investigate. We haven't told you what came of that investigation. So guess what? This one too, we investigate. But because we know you are not smart, we are issuing a statement to tell you that the thing that we didn't do the last time, this time around they will do it. And we know you will believe us. That's in essence what is being communicated to the people of Ghana in that statement. But guess what? I mentioned Mr. Albert Kandapah and said that he's an accomplished man. I'm surprised that he would allow such a statement to come from national security. But you know, maybe I'm going too far if I point to Mr. Kandapah. The National Security Council, who is the chair of it? Who is the chair of the National Security Council?
The Vice President.
The President.
Okay.
The President. It's the only state institution that has its council chaired by the President himself. This one, you can't separate him from it too. He chairs the thing, and they issued a statement saying that they will investigate themselves. So why are we okay with these things? Because if we were not okay with it, they will never happen. Somebody would be scared to put out a statement telling Ghanaians this, if they knew that when it comes, somebody's feet will burn.
You see, we have a history in this country of very powerful journalists who virtually by themselves became institutions by themselves. You know, what's the question? It's a hard question. Is it us? Are we the problem? Because I mean, I remember perhaps last year or so, right here in this studio, having the same conversation with Johnny Hughes, TV3, and Francis Aban. You know, I've had this conversation with Araba Kumse, you know, I think Shamima, you know. So we have these conversations all the time, and we will continue. Today I'm here with, David and you, and we are having this conversation again. And yet we do nothing. In recent times, no journalist, correct me. Well, I remember Latif taking them on. Well, it wasn't even Latif, was it? It was organization.
Oh, yes.
That it was.
I think that's an organization.
Right. So it was your establishment that actually took that issue to
By
court.
the way, we're still in court on that issue.
I was going to say.
Apparently, they don't know who was on duty in front of their own building that day.
Right.
The police,
Right.
the most regimented institution in civil life. They cannot identify the people they put on duty on a specific day at a specific time. Their cameras did not work. They could.
You see, here's what. It is what it is. I mean, I would expect them to behave like that, but what are we doing, though?
Look, let me tell you my story. In the recent arrest.
Right.
So, after I was arrested and all that, detained overnight, the following day, I was handcuffed, taken home. They said they were looking for some items, a photo album, perhaps connected to the story I was investigating. I hadn't published yet. Then they granted me bail that day. Still detained my equipment, my phone and my Wi-Fi, and asked that I come back for it on Monday. I think on Tuesday. Monday was supposed to be a holiday. I went there on Tuesday, and the investigator said, look, you are discharged without any other excuse. You are discharged. Can I have my equipment? No, you can't have them. We are still investigating. I said, okay. First, he even asked me to give him access to the phones. And I said, I can't do that. He said, I will bring you a consent form. You will fill it and then give us access. I said, I can't give you access. So whilst we were there, a gentleman walked in and demanded to see the commander. He walked out with him. He came back and said, I'm going to see my bosses. He went. After about 10 minutes, he came back and said, you are discharged, go home. I said, when am I coming back? He said, no, you go, we'll call you if you have to come back. And I said, what about my equipment? He said he hasn't had any order on that. So the gentleman, I believe, was an agent for the alleged complainant. So he then said, David, go, I'll get your equipment for you. And he's not a police officer. So I went around 4 p.m. I had a call to come back for my equipment. I went for the equipment. And you recall that the day after I was granted bail, the police issued a public statement stating that I was arrested for an attempt to commit crime, to wit extortion and
extortion. I remember that very well. I remember that very well.
So then the gentleman called me later and said, they've released your equipment, go for them. So I asked the CID, the investigator, what is going to happen to the statement you issued? He said, oh, my bosses will deal with it. And since, I think a day before Easter, I've been waiting for the statement. I spoke to my lawyers, what do we do? Because this borders on my reputation. The woman who lodged the complaint has since withdrawn her complaint. And from my investigation, she did not make a complaint of extortion. The issue of false publication, because I did not publish any story on that, so couldn't have sufficed neither. So what exactly was the police investigating? Nobody has communicated anything to me since then. So I tried to discuss with my lawyers and say, look, you have to leave this because...
He has lawyers, by the way.
so they said the police have broad powers, and if you take this matter on, it's not going to go anywhere. So that's where we are. No one is speaking.
So David Tamaklo, I'm trying to appreciate this, David Tamaklo, please let's recap your positions.
The
editor-in-chief. Right? That's the editor-in-chief. Also, vice president of PRIMPAC. And when I was very little, I was closely associated with Prempeh because you know somebody was president of it. Yeah, right. So you, with all your powers, so in this space, you are not just anybody. You know, editor-in-chief, vice president of one of our organizations. You are literally sitting here and lifting up your hands, like, right? So if it happens to him, what should he do? Do you understand my question? Yeah. It's as though today's journalist is saying, okay, you hit here today, perhaps try here tomorrow.
So I think what you're doing is you're recalling, I'll call them the glory days, of when a journalist would, you know, stand on his principle and be arrested and thrown into jail and locked up for weeks, months, years, you know, and still stand on their principle and come out and continue to be a journalist and become celebrated and hailed for the fact that they have stood tall and allowed. Because
that's not what I'm doing.
Because
I'm saying that there was a time where, even as you are touching the journalists, you are scared.
Well, I don't know when that was. Maybe I wasn't around. Because let me tell you, we've come from a point where you are a criminal for saying something that somebody doesn't like. Criminal libel, right? We've come from that time to a time when, okay, we say, okay, press, you are free. Now you can say what you like. But everything that first of all, if you want information, we will give it to you. If you try and get that information, we'll arrest you. We'll charge you with something else. It doesn't have to be criminal life. We'll charge you with something else. But before we even charge you, we'll beat you.
Kojo, let's appreciate that today we claim we live in a democracy. You see, that's my issue.
But even the era we do it.
Exactly, because even then it was not a democracy.
Right. That's what I'm trying to
address. And the chance of actually getting killed. It was a you could touch that threat.
That's what I'm trying to address.
This is a democracy.
So people like your father, people like Abdul Malik Kwaku Baako, they have essentially done the unimaginable to create the space we are now allowed to operate in. Now let's not take away credit from where it's due. This country's press freedom record internationally is good. It's good. We're doing better than the United Kingdom. We're doing better than the United States.
I mean, we were.
We are. Currently, at the last time that they checked. Well, yeah, that's all it is. But there are reasons why we are seen to be doing well. Okay?
Sorry, forgive me. Technical pitch. So we'll take a quick commercial break. Say that's right.
Oh, it's incredible! Bang on target!
Every day, he has a drink filled with malt. Every day, he has a drink filled with malt and milk. Every day, he has a drink filled with malt, milk, and cocoa. Every day, he needs the nutritious goodness of Milo. Milo, the energy to go further. This advert is FDA approved. Every day, he looks after his brother and chases a bus. Every day he looks after his brother, chases a bus, and learns new things. Every day he looks after his brother, chases a bus, learns new things, and gets back home. Every day he looks after his brother, chases a bus, learns new things, gets back home, and helps his mom. Phew. That's why every day he needs his cup of Milo filled with the nutritious goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa. Milo, the energy to go further.
From Nestle.
This advert is FDA approved.
Back from the break. Sorry, could you please go right ahead?
No,
sorry, I'm sorry that I...
Right. So I was about to explain the reason why we seem to be doing so well on these international indices.
Right.
It's actually an unintended advantage of the problem David was talking about earlier. The fact that we're so divided. So the media is polarized, particularly on political grounds. So at any given time, about 50% of the media is completely protected because their party is in power. Okay, now the other 50% have to kind of be careful how they talk. There's, no, not another 50, maybe another 48%. So there's some 2% of the media that is speaking the truth. Okay, now that 2% are doing such a decent job telling stories of, social issues and, pointing out and fighting corruption and so forth. That 2% makes us look good. While the remaining 98% are silenced either by patronage or fear. That's why we're doing well. Now, if we had that kind of vibrant media environment where every journalist was independent, worked for an independent media house, and simply pursued the truth, we would have seen either more and more of these excesses from government, which would then make us look like the most harassed group in the country, or we would see far less of it because they would be terrified of being caught.
I like the terrified.
That's
because our constitution gives us so much power, doesn't
Very
it?
good. Very good. And if we do a good job, that should be the outcome.
Right.
You see? So this is the point I'm trying to make, that we look good internationally just because there isn't too much of there aren't too many examples of what happened to Caleb. But even one example is too much. You get it. It's one too many. But in our case, we've had journalists killed. And we're still yet to identify the killer. We haven't even touched the person who actually announced and called on people to harm him. We haven't even touched him.
Have we not rewarded him?
Pardon?
Have we not continued to reward him?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I haven't rewarded him, but yes, I mean, he's going about his life. He's going about his life. Okay, we live in a country where, as a journalist, the people we are working for, right, the public, they don't even think we have a right to the information that we are trying to get for them. I mean, can you imagine what it must take for us to do a good job in such an environment?
Right. Because depending on which party that person belongs to,
exactly,
that determines how they perceive the work that you are doing.
Yeah. And there are some who just think you are too known.
There's that.
You wake up in the morning and come and speak plenty of English. You think you know everything. I mean, you interview people and you don't call them honorable. You don't bow and kowtow to them like how a journalist should be. So they don't like you for that reason, not because of the party that you belong to. So you see the forces against which we are made to operate. So when you ask the question, why are we doing nothing about it? It's because, first of all, those who are doing something about it are too few.
Right.
2%, right? But then again, even if you wanted to do something about it, you are either too terrified to do so, or your mouth is too full for you to speak against. So you see, you get it. So this is the answer to your question. I don't think we can remove ourselves from the blame here. There's enough blame to go around. Right. Okay, and it's unfortunate because the few people who are actually doing the job right are not enough. They are not enough to make a change. But what will make those who are terrified or those who are pacified, make them get out of their comfort zones and join the 2%? What will make them do it? I don't know.
Let me bring in some of our viewers at this point. This one says, good evening, Amma. I'm a retired broadcast journalist. The media milieu used to be very, very respected because the pedigree was very high. But most of the crop of journalists we have now are more or less sellouts or cowed by their bosses. His name is Jojo Jepi Gabra in Cape Coast. Okay. This one says, police intimidation is the least of the problems of Ghana. Justice in Ghana is expensive, and it's becoming an investment. If a journalist of your caliber is being intimidated, then imagine what the illiterates are going through. Ghana is in reverse gear, and the earlier we do something about it, the better for the future of this country. Yohineba Kwesen. Now, this one says, good evening, Amma. The beating of journalists is getting out of hand. I think it's about time that you journalists rise up to defend your profession. It's so sad. Is this our country, Ghana, 5 years ago? The media must rise up against this forces now. You guys can do it, just as you did during the fight against Galamsey. Have we won the fight against Galamsey? It's so sad looking at the size of journalists and looking at the kind of forces that were sent to arrest them. How did our country get to this point? Impunity all around. Why? Why? His name is Bill in Medina. He says, the media or journalists have the power to turn things around. The greedy ones will not support you. Charlie, you know, Bob past me. But you see, and here's where I agree with him. If we don't do something about it, who do we expect to do something about it?
I'm going to say something.
Right.
You see, we refer to the media as the fourth estate of the realm. We have the judiciary, the legislature, the executive, which are all taken care of somehow. Talking about security of work and all that. Have we asked ourselves what the security of the journalists is, apart from what we read in the law? So that when Pan-African TV is able to get journalists or resource persons to sit down for a number of hours for which they are going to pay bills and all that, how it is sorted out. So, Kojo talked about how some 50%, 48% always have interest. The particular media house, apart from wanting to carry on the work of the journalist, is also looking at financial security to be able to pay workers and, manage the office. So one political party comes and decide that, look, Amma is my person, Kojo is my person, so let me give Kojo some advert to make Kojo's media house great. And the favor, definitely, they may not even mention any favor, but you have to render some kind of favor. And that's what the circle has been. So where you find the 50%, the 48%, and the two, perhaps those two, they probably don't even see what happens in the shadow.
You see, it even gets worse than that. Sorry to catch you, David. It gets, sometimes it's not even about the adverts. Sometimes even about getting their people to even come and answer on, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because if the quality of the productions of the TV station is good, is high, the rest will follow. So deliberately, and I'm speaking from experience, if you push me, I'll mention names. There are communication officers within some of these political parties who think that the way to hold a media house to ransom is to deny them quality representatives from there. And they say to you, I've had somebody say to me, I won't give you people so that you grow that station. Direct. And I'm saying, if you push me, I've mentioned his name here before. I'll do it again. Direct. So sometimes it's not even just about the money. It's just about resource persons as well. I won't give you the people. So sit there and have your one-sided conversations.
That's where I will agree with you that the media can do more. Okay,
we can.
I'll agree with you on that because, look, multimedia, we've been boycotted by governments. We've been boycotted by governments. Both of the governments we've had. We survived because we demonstrated to those governments that actually it's not because of you that we have quality programming. And that is a truth that media houses need to embrace. It's not because of them. Actually, it's the other way around. It's like we've misunderstood the economics.
Thank you. Were you there when I was having that conversation? Because that's what I said.
We've misunderstood the economics. So if a politician doesn't have the media, what do they have? Who can they talk to? Can they go door to door across the country?
I will have the conversation with or without you.
Absolutely. Do you know the smart people who are in this country?
Right.
Actually, what we've done is, by giving so much of our airtime to politicians, we have silenced intelligence. Because I think it is quite clear that our politicians are not the smartest, the sharpest tools in the box.
Right.
Go to Parliament. Do you remember when there was a debate about whether or not Ghana should participate in Ebola vaccine trials? Do you remember? In Parliament, where the best of us have been chosen to represent us, they had a debate on this. And people were saying, oh, how can you come and test the vaccine in the... in fact, what they said was, how can you come and test the virus in Ghana? We have been lucky that Ebola didn't come here. Now you are going to bring the virus to come and test it in Ghana. Then this is what one MP said. And as for media, you don't have to push me. I'll mention names. Our defense minister today, at the time, he was a member of parliament for Bimbila, Dominic Nitiwu, another friend of mine. But let me call a spade a spade. He said, so you are going to come and do this trial in Ho, so that when I'm traveling to Bimbila and I pass by Ho, I'll catch the virus and go and give it to my people in Ho. So on that basis, he said, no. So people said all kinds of ridiculous, ignorant, dumb things in that debate. And at the end of it, they refused to let Ghana participate in those trials. Now, at the time, one of the world's leading vaccination experts was Professor Alex Dodu, who said in an interview that, in fact, Parliament is not helping. If they don't know what they are talking about, they should shut up. Do you know what Parliament did? They held him in contempt. They hauled him before the Privileges Committee, held him in contempt, and made him apologize to them. Made the smart guy apologize to the ignorant ones.
Well, I mean, you can be smart. You just can't call me ignorant. Isn't that the principle here? What's the moral of the story? The moral
of the story is that the people who we are giving our airtime to, who we seem to think that our radio stations and TV stations will not survive without, they are not the smartest people to give to hand over their opinions to our audience.
Right.
And in any case, what is it that they have to say that we can't preempt? I mean, do you not know what MPP will say on an issue? Do you not know what NDC will say on an issue? Which aspect of it is a mystery? For which reason we will sacrifice airtime that we should give to someone who can teach us something we don't know, and give it to people who come and tell us something we already know. So when they then start threatening us that they will withhold their ignorance from us, why do we get upset? So both parties have done it to our media house, and we survived. In fact, during that time, we produced some of our best quality. We did stories that changed our country. Locked and Forgotten, Seth Kwame Boateng. It was done at a time when government wasn't talking to us. We've done stories that have improved our lives because we were able to silence the noise and focus on intelligence. So I don't think media houses should be afraid of boycotts, of the government deciding not to speak to us, or the opposition deciding not to speak to us. Don't be afraid. Welcome the silence. Use it for something sensible, because you will not get that break from ignorance in a long time.
In a long time.
It takes some time to get there. I mean,
should it?
Yeah,
some of us are there by default.
It takes some time.
Some of us are there by default. Sometimes they don't give you a choice. Like in our instance, they just say to you that we will not give you our people, and you are there. So once you are there, deal with it.
Anyway, I mean, for a new station coming up, I mean, a new station, you may not be able to go through it the way Joy FM is able to, because they have been there for some time, and they've actually marked out how to deal with this situation. We shouldn't be there, but that's it. It took some time for them to get there.
But we started somewhere.
You see, I am not agreeing with this man. No. I'm not agreeing with you, David, on a lot of issues. Okay, let me read the messages. Well, Anya Inaketia says the impunity in the country is unabated. If indeed the man in charge of national security in the Ashanti region refuses to hand over, is that a way to deal with him by handcuffing him? I mean, solidarity with Madam Kate, James Fwa, he says. Should we go to Facebook and come back? Let's go to Facebook and come back. You know, let's involve our Facebook viewers as well. Fred Granny says, why keep... Okay, sure. You don't like our adverts. Hey, sir, did you not hear Kojo speak about, you know, money to keep the... Please, like our adverts, watch our adverts, enjoy our adverts, patronize the people who advertise with us. Right. Fred again says, can you rephrase the question, how do you engage? And Fred says, good answer from Kojo. I agree. That answer was a perfect answer. I was just, you know, pushing to get that answer. That's why I asked that question. Ali Jacob says Ghana, and he's crying, and he says NPP, and he's crying. Wow, your name. Okay, so this one says, nothing, Amma, is more annoying than for us to remember that what brought Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden is disobedience, and go ahead to disobey in 2021. You don't justify a wrongdoing by referring to a similar happening in the past. The past error. Right. Okay. Sorry. I know that this is supposed to be some very deep, you know, but I'm not getting it. I'm sorry. If you could send again. And this time, don't be deep. Just tell me what it is you want to say. Nanania Mensa says, Kojo is right. Some Ghanaians don't respect journalists. Rudolph Louis says, great submission from Kojo. Stephen Boachi Adam Jr. says, Kojo is really making my evening. I'm very proud of you, boss. This is Steve from Italy. David is speaking as a, you know, vice president of Primpack. Do forgive him. Understand his office, his high office. This one says, please, Amma, any difference between teachers and journalists in this country in terms of how they are being treated? His name is Nana in Koko. This one says, ask Kojo about his early days with Radio Valco in Cape Coast. Broadcast journalists were very well respected. He and some of us were household names. And this is from Jojo Jepi Jabra in Cape Coast. This one says, hi, power is like an army officer in uniform. The moment the uniform is hung up on the wall, nobody will salute you again. I always remember what my father said. He said, we should all be careful because power can deceive you. His name is James K. Sabba. This one says, please, I want to ask the whereabouts of the guy who came out to the drop this chamber. Okay, he says, freedom of speech is lost in this country. This one says, good evening, Amma. These are the reasons why I always respect Kojo. He speaks it as it is. How I wish we'll get people like Kojo, my main man KOD, Johnny Hughes, and a few others who can stand with Mr. Pratt to fight these. Ghana would have been far better. Okay, you mentioned somebody else's name. God, they watch him. His name is Justice from Hoho. You see, that man is my uncle, so I don't like it when you guys, you know. Good evening, Pan African TV. If the media houses can stand on your ground and not allow the politicians, we will value you, the journalist. His name is Kofi in Sapema. This one says, good evening, Amma, and your panelists. Journalists are suffering all of this today because of politics. Some of the journalists are now politically partisan than the politician. His name is Joe. This one says, I am very scandalized by the media's refusal to mention the government or the president in this. Don't forget that it is the president that appointed the minister and all the so-called national security guys. The back... Stop calling. The bulk stops with the president. It is exactly because of his inaction or endorsement of their actions. That is why the impunity is growing. If it was President Mahama in power, the whole discussion would have been about him. We will all taste the fruits of hypocrisy. His name is Bibi in North K. This one says, hey, hello, Amma, I salute Kojo for the fact that he mentioned Dominic Nitiwu's name in the COVID issue. Most people shun away from mentioning people in issues like this. I love you, bro. His name is Kweku Frimpong Mafu. This one says, I'm shocked. I'm surprised. The young guy in the blue suit is really speaking my mind. You mean Kojo Yankson? We voted for people who then talk to us. Today, look at what they are doing to us. His name is Obididom from La Palme Wine Junction. Okay, so, right, I think I've done well. There are lots of them coming in, but let's come back into the studio. Way forward.
Well, first of all, your Facebook and WhatsApp followers are lovely, lovely people. I like the fact that someone thinks I'm a young man in a blue suit. Way forward.
Right.
The thing that has to change is a culture. It's a culture, and it's not fair for us to just point fingers at leaders, okay, because they come from amongst us. So the culture has to change amongst all of us. We have to all understand that these rights that we are fighting for, it's our rights, our rights. Remember the story I told about the wild pigs? So, you know, you think that it's happening to someone else, but it's your rights. So I think the first thing that we have to do is start to figure out how to change our culture. The media has a role to play here. The content of what we put out to the public will either improve their thinking or deteriorate their thinking or keep them thinking the way they are right now. So we have a choice to make. Okay, we have to put out content that challenges people's thoughts. Let's not be afraid. Let's not always think that we should let our content meet their expectation. Let's rather have in mind the goal and move everyone towards the goal with the kinds of conversations we have, you know, and the kinds of contents we give to people. If we can see the big picture and they can't, then our responsibility is to show it to them.
Right.
You know, so in the choice of guests, in the choice of topics, even in the times that we decide to discuss certain things, we must always think of what we want to impact our nation with, and that is the first step for me. The second step has to come from the people. While we are taking these risks, and our job is a risk. While we are taking these risks, we need the people to protect us. We need the people to back us. We need the people to understand that we are only doing it for you. Do you think Caleb went there to go and take the pictures to put in his album at home? Do you think he just went there to find out for himself so he could keep it to himself? No. They call us professional gossips.
Yeah.
We went to find out to come and tell you.
Because
So
you deserve
you
the
need to know.
truth.
This
You
is the job you've
deserve
given
the
us.
truth.
This is the job you've given us. But this idea that I don't want to know, if it's you that's going to find out, then I don't want to know. That can't be your position. You need to protect us so that at all times you will know. At all times you will know. So for me, that's what I'll ask the public to do. Just look, understand that your role is to protect journalists. They are your eyes and ears. Protect your eyes. Protect your ears. Otherwise, the people you are supporting will make you blind. Because that's what they want. They want blind loyalty. Are you volunteering to be blind?
David.
I couldn't agree with Kojo.
Right.
I think the media need to realize its responsibility.
Right.
We have the judiciary, the legislature, who all recognize themselves as an entity with responsibility.
Right.
And so the media must recognize itself as such and begin to look at issues that can strengthen it together to spearhead the responsibility it is to honor. And if we are able to do that, if we are able to work together towards the issue and not because of some interest anybody has or that, we will be able to then give hope to the public that, look, the work you have assigned us, the work the Constitution has assigned us, we are doing it. And then we can get the backing from the public in whatever we do. And so if issues happen and we are divided, I mean, we are all speaking from our interests, it's difficult for the public to follow us on the way forward. So I would entreat journalists, media organizations, media bodies. It's interesting to know that often when issues happen in Ghana here, you have international media organizations rather coming in to do the work.
Right.
You get, the CPJ, the Reporters Without Borders, coming in to do what we, the bodies here, are supposed to do. It's embarrassing. And I think that we need to start putting our hearts together, fight together, and, people do say that the problem of Ghana is the media, and sometimes I do agree that we look away from the issues, and the whole public look away from the issues. So we must all begin to rally back together.
I said that was the last, but I'll take it back. Do we have any final words for Caleb? Before say
okay,
what.
Yeah.
Let's say something to him.
Certainly, I was going to say.
Lovely guy. I love him.
He's a funny guy, isn't he?
I love him.
I was just going to say one thing first of all, that you notice that I didn't put any responsibility on the government.
Right.
I don't think it's in their interest for us to fail. So I'm not going to ask them to now do something to help us succeed. It's in their interest for us to fail. So our job is to make it impossible for their interest to come.
No choice.
Yeah. So I think that we need to put as much emphasis and shine as much light on problems of the media as we do on problems of society. Okay, so we're going all out for Galamsey, we're going all out against no bed syndrome and all of these guys, we're going all out about COVID-19 and corruption and all that. Let's also go all out when it comes to issues of media and press freedom.
Absolutely.
Because in the end, if we succeed, it's in the interest of the people.
I kind of think that this experience, I pray it doesn't, sort of, what's the word, dim his light. I'm just praying that,
If anything will dim Caleb's light, it may be the way his own team handles this. So they now have a very big responsibility to protect that light in him. They must do everything to make him feel like he doesn't suffer in vain. And that even if somebody is going to kick him 10 times in the groin, in the end, it will pay off. Because the people for whom he works, the people with whom he works, will never let his work be in vain. They will protect him, they will defend him and push it to the farthest realms to ensure that he gets justice. So that tomorrow, when he sees something happening that he must, as a journalist, bring to the attention of the public, he will not think to himself, "We cry mikoye. My own people will give me up." That thought must never gain root in his mind. Right. So right now, I think a lot of it hinges on his own team and how they manage and handle him. It's an opportunity. They may end up creating one of the greatest journalists we ever see if they handle him well.
Well, absolutely. 2 seconds. 2 seconds, we are out.
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity for Caleb as much as it is an opportunity for the media group, the organizations he's working in. I think that this situations gives you opportunity to see all the four corners of the work, the profession you have chosen. Right. And I believe I've followed him for some time before this issue happened. And I think he's a strong guy. If he would rather take advantage of it and shoot himself up further, because, you listen to the argument, some people may never have known Caleb. Today, he's known by some people.
But, yeah.
But more importantly, it tells you that when you're working for the public, you're working in the interest of the public, you have people who follow you.
It pays.
So that is what must strengthen him and push him on.
Push him on. And Zoe as well.
And Zoe, yes.
And Zoe as well. Right. Thank you. So, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Now a pleasure. I hope that it will always be a pleasure. Right. So thank you, David. Thank you, Kojo. Great time as always. So this has been our conversation for this evening. Hopefully the conversation continues at home. We will come back to this on Thursday. Hopefully with one of our media legends, the man Haruna Atta. Hopefully on Thursday. But Wednesday though, tomorrow we have a book review that you do not want to miss about. Not this video, that's the title of the book. No, I'm still reading. My goodness, you can't wait for tomorrow. You will enjoy the show, I promise you. So have a good evening. Caleb, to you, Zoe, all of us here stand with you. Have a good evening. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.